One of the first video games I ever played was Mario Kart, so it's safe to say that I have a deep passion for the series. And after playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for so many years, I was ready to move on to something new. Mario Kart World has been out for a month now, and after pre-ordering the game and playing it for 80 hours at this point, I wanted to share my thoughts on the game. But without any further ado, let's just jump straight into it. We all know the main concept of Mario Kart at this point. Race around the course, pick up items, and use them to claim victory. But like every game that came before it, Mario Kart World adds new features, mechanics, and game modes to spice things up a little bit. First, I want to talk about the open world, which is the main thing that leads to how everything else in the game functions. Every track is spread out across a big island, and they are interconnected by multiple routes that exist between them. Not gonna lie, I think this is a cool concept that has a lot of potential. Do I think that potential is fulfilled? Well, let's dig into the game modes. Grand Prix mode works differently in this game compared to past Mario Kart games. In this game, you do the first race like normal, but from there, you have to drive from that course to the next before doing one lap on that course, before doing the same thing for the next race and the next. Personally, I'm okay with this, but I kind of wish it wasn't limited to just one lap on the regular course when you finally get there. This is because most of these connected courses just aren't that interesting. It's what you spend 2/3 of the race doing. I'd be a lot more interested in this idea if you were to still do 3 laps upon arrival, or hell, even just 2 would have been fine. Versus races suffer the same issue, but at least in that game mode it's possible to just do each race normally if you want, which is why I much prefer playing that mode. Luckily, there's not much reason to play Grand Prix once you've already done them all. Time trials are more or less the same as they've always been. They don't even utilize the connections at all. This is fine by me, as I don't really think that would have been very good anyway. I never really liked time trial mode, so I don't really have much positive to say about it. But at least they didn't ruin it. As for battle mode, it's also here! Battle mode seems lazily slapped together, just like it was in the original version of Mario Kart 8. Most of the battle courses are just reused racetracks, just like the original version of Mario Kart 8. But at least in this game, it's not as poorly executed, as they still manage to feel like battle tracks anyway. But still, there's only 2 actual dedicated battle stages in the game, and both of them feel way too big. And Thwomp Desert was rebranded as Chain Chomp Desert for some reason. If I'm being honest, I'm just surprised they didn't use Airship Fortress as a battle stage. I don't know, it just seems too perfect. Especially the upper section. All they needed to do was limit players to the airship itself, and I think it would have turned out great. I would have rather have had that over whatever we got for Dino Jungle. Oh, and I almost forgot, we're going back to only having Balloon Battle and Coin Runners again. Yippee! At least Balloon Battle is back to being in elimination mode again. While I personally prefer KO Fest style battle modes, I also think that should be its own separate thing, rather than being what it was in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, as well as other Mario Kart games. Anyway, in short, I never really cared for battle mode, but at least Mario Kart 8 Deluxe tried to make it more interesting by adding a plethora of game modes to try. But for some reason, Mario Kart World just strips that all away and gives us next to nothing in return. If Nintendo wants me to play it, they sure aren't doing a good job convincing me to do so. Okay, now here's where things get interesting. Mario Kart World adds a whole new game mode called Knockout Tour. In Knockout Tour, the game starts out with 24 racers, who are all racing to the next checkpoint, where the last 4 racers to do so get eliminated. The remaining players do the same thing for the next checkpoint, and the cycle continues until there are just 4 players left. Then those 4 players race around one lap of whatever course they ended up at, and obviously whoever gets first wins. I think this is a great concept, and I genuinely love that they finally added an elimination style race mode. I do, however, have my gripes with this mode, but I'll dig deeper into that later. Let me talk about Freeroam for a second. This is exactly what it sounds like, a mode that allows you to drive freely around the world wherever you'd like. For any open world game, I always think this is a must-have feature. What it also needs is to have some sort of reason to explore said world. What Mario Kart World does is scatter a bunch of Peach medallions, question panels, and P-switches around. What do these do? Well, as far as the Peach medallions and question panels go, I'm pretty sure all you get out of them is a bunch of stickers for finding them all. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's not really a reason to do them all outside of that. I know you need some to unlock mirror mode, but even then you don't really need that many. As far as the P-switches go, these create missions. Most of these aren't too hard. It's usually just some sort of obstacle course that you have to go through to make it to the finish in time. I've seen a few racing ones too, but for the most part, I haven't seen anything too crazy. There is that one mission in Shy Guy Bazaar that is painfully difficult, but that's mainly because the game just refused to let me ride the wall here for some reason. Overall, I like what Freeroam has to offer, but I wish there was a little more incentive to do everything. Next, I want to talk about the new mechanics that this game implements. One of the main things that Nintendo has added to the game is the charged jump. On its own, this isn't anything special, as using it doesn't give you any additional speed. In fact, it's arguably slower in many cases. But what it can be useful for is setting yourself up for the two other gameplay mechanics that have been added, those being the rail grind and the wall ride. Everywhere you go, there is some kind of rail you can grind on. A lot of the time this can actually be faster. Otherwise, they're at least still useful to get away from the havoc that the 24 players on the map can wreak. You can also drive on the walls for a short period of time. All you gotta do is activate a trick or a charged jump boost and then simply drive into a wall. When you combine all of these mechanics together, it creates one of the most fun Mario Kart experiences that has ever been created. One last feature I want to mention is Rewind. Honestly, when this was first announced, I wasn't sure how it would really be useful, as it doesn't rewind the world around you. But what I didn't consider was how easy it is to miss a jump in Freeroam. Rewind gives you another chance to make that jump without having to drive all the way back to the spot on your own. It's also useful to practice certain shortcuts and techniques around the world so you can apply them in a race. I still don't know why they kept it in regular single-player races, but at least it's just limited to that. Course design is another important factor for any racing game. For the most part, I think pretty much every course in Mario Kart World has enough going on to keep you engaged. There are rails everywhere to grind, there are shortcuts that require wall riding, there's just so much to do. I don't think there's a single course in the game that I dislike. Except maybe that one version of Peach Stadium that takes you upstairs and that's it, but does that really even count? However, the problem I have with the course design is the connected courses. Unlike the courses themselves, there isn't really a whole lot going on. Sure, there are some rails to grind and walls to ride, even a few shortcuts to take, but it's almost never really worth doing that over simply driving straight. Even charge jumping does jack shit for you, as it's literally slower than simply driving straight. Especially in the water, where it feels even slower, even with the extra trick boost that you can get. This is why I'm not a huge fan of Knockout Tour, even though it could have easily been the best thing to ever be added to the series. When it comes to the characters, although they added a lot of insane options like Goomba, Biddybug, a fucking cow, I still feel like the options are lacking. Don't get me wrong, I still think it's a good roster, just not as much as what Mario Kart 8 Deluxe ended up being. We're just missing a lot of characters like Diddy Kong, Petey Piranha, Kamek, the goddamn me, all in favor of these wacky unexpected additions. Also, the character select screen is just terrible. You got multiple pages of characters to choose from when Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which had almost as many characters, fit them all into one page. Not only that, but the costumes for the main cast aren't even combined with the original characters. They are just their own unique option. Why? This just makes the character select screen look even messier than it ever has before. At least there's an option to sort, which puts all the costumes for each character together, but that doesn't improve things much. There is no reason they couldn't have just made a subcategory for each character with their costumes. I need a drink. One of my Coca-Colas. Especially with what I'm about to talk about next. If this blows up and leaves a crater where my house used to be, I'm going to be pissed. Now it's time to talk about the online gameplay. Honestly, this is where I feel the game suffers the most because of not just some of the new mechanics, but also its implementation as a whole. What I mean is there is no tournament mode. like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe had, which means you can't join public rooms with customized settings. There's also no regional rooms. If you want to play online with randoms, you can only do worldwides. Then you've got the track voting system, which 90% of the time is just a bunch of routes between courses because Nintendo really wanted to push that gimmick. Problem is, most people don't really care for it too much, so they just pick random, which guarantees a standard race. Except wait! I wrote the script down before the update last week. Now, even if you pick random, most of the time, it'll still be a connected course. Hell, most of the time it'll just be one of the options already available to choose from. So much for random, am I right? But it's not even just about that. It's about the fact that Nintendo is trying their damn hardest to shove this stupid ass gimmick down our throats when clearly not too many people care for it too much. Nintendo really saw how 90% of players, even the super casual gamers who will pretty much play anything, were picking random in order to guarantee a standard race, and instead of taking this as feedback, to change the online system to allow players to choose to queue up for just those races if they wanted to, they doubled down and said, no, you will play this way, and took away the one method of playing classic Mario Kart away from us. I get it, they put a lot of work into this game, and sure, maybe that includes the connected courses as well. But most people aren't a fan of this, and Nintendo seems to be taking this feedback personally, and forcing everyone to play their way, which has driven a lot of people away from the game. Even I considered switching back to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe after they pulled that stunt. All we are asking for is a way to play standard races with random players who prefer the regular courses. Why is this so much to ask for? It's not taking anything away from the game to have that option. If you enjoy the connected courses and don't mind the update, that is fine. You should be able to have the option to play them. But those of us who don't care for them should also have the option to opt out. If this option existed, believe it or not, I would probably be more willing to flip-flop between the options. But this feels like a slap in the face to every single player who has been very vocal about their disapproval of the current system. If there was an option to play the game the classic way, no connected courses, just standard 3-lap races, it would literally benefit every online Mario Kart player. And not just those who want it, but also those who don't mind it as it is. Because one side will get what they've been begging for since weeks before the game released, and the other side can play the game as it is without having to deal with 90% of their lobby picking random all the time. Not to mention the fact that most of the people playing in the regular lobbies will be casual players who often express how all of their opponents are absolute sweat lords ruining the fun of the game. Not that I agree with this take, because you should be able to play however you want in order to have fun, which is kind of the whole point of this entire topic, but still. Maybe one day Nintendo will take this into consideration and finally implement this feature, but after the stunt they just pulled, I don't ever see that happening. Anyway, in the grand scheme of things, that really shouldn't be as big of a deal as it is. But the way Nintendo has gone about it is absurd, and why I feel it is so important that more people are vocal about this issue. Now, what about the online gameplay itself? Honestly, the lag is what really kills it. Even more than the whole connected course problem, in my opinion, it's even worse than it is in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. This is partly because of the fact that there are as many as 24 players in the lobby at once now, partly because they could all be on the opposite side of the earth, but mainly because of how the game registers hits. It was bad in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It should have been fixed within the first day that game came out. But if I'm being honest with you, I would rather go back to having that over what we got now. Let me explain. In Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, because of lag, what would happen is if you trailed someone on your screen, it would register on theirs regardless of if they actually hit the item or not. This caused it to look like they got hit by nothing on their screen. This was terrible, as it essentially made it very difficult to avoid trailed items, because even if you did everything in your power to avoid it, you may have still hit it on the attacker screen, causing it to affect you anyway. But Mario Kart World has a new issue, or rather two of them, regarding trailed items. One thing that could happen is you hit the trailed item like normal on your screen, but on theirs, although you'll go tumbling, it didn't actually register as a hit against you, meaning they get to keep that trailed item. This in itself probably wouldn't be as bad if it didn't potentially mean they could throw the item away and hit you again. Not to mention that the person who hit you can't even see that item anymore. But here's the thing, the opposite could also happen. You trail someone on your screen, but it doesn't register on theirs, meaning you essentially lost your item for no reason. In my experience, the latter happens a hell of a lot more often because of how packed most races are, especially on the long straightaways. Like, it's one thing to lose your defense and get hit because someone ran into it. But for that to happen, and that person didn't even get affected by your item, is a horrible experience. And with how common it happens, it just makes the game that much less enjoyable. Especially given how this game forces you to drag your items now, so you don't even get to control the situation. The logical way to fix this would be to have items simply phase through players unless those items actually hit them. Whether thrown or trailed, this would eliminate false hit animations, as well as the item disappearing from your inventory because someone hit it on your screen, but not on theirs. For some reason, Nintendo refuses to program the game to work like this, so now we just have to deal with this laggy, desync-ass gameplay. Another way to fix it is to simply remove the ability to trail items altogether, just like in Double Dash, removing the possibility of this issue existing in the first place. Although I wouldn't personally mind this change, something tells me that most players would hate this option, so I don't really see that happening anytime soon. While we're still on the topic of items, the item distribution feels way out of whack too. I don't even think it's that bad when playing offline, but online, I swear, it gives everyone and their great uncle a golden mushroom if they're in any worse of a position than like 10th. Same thing with mega mushrooms and boomerangs. And with iframes being nerfed big time, it makes things that much worse. So if you're up in the top spots and get hit by literally anything, good luck not being 20th or something by the time you finally recover. I find it a little funny, to be honest, because this is actually going to make bagging an even more viable strategy than it was in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, just because of how easy it is to get knocked back into low positions and how quickly you can recover to the front. What's the point in maintaining a top spot if 897 people are just gonna end up passing you after you get hit by one single item the whole race? I've never been much of a bagger in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but I seem to have significantly better luck whenever I do it in Mario Kart World, just because it's so easy to catch back up to the top spots. Even in Knockout Tour, even though it's significantly riskier, it still feels like to play because there's just too much chaos up ahead. All I have to do is make sure I'm not bottom 4 when I get to the checkpoint and all is fine. All in all, here's the thing. Online isn't that good. Not in the game's current state. The item distribution needs to be revamped, lag needs to be improved upon, and course selection needs to be changed, or at least they need to add a separate queue for standard races. I'd also love it if they added tournaments again, but that's not quite as important as the rest of it is. If they just fix the item trailing issue and nothing else, I think that would improve my online experience by a significant margin. But as it stands right now, I'm not finding myself enjoying the game as much as I had hoped. Now before I wrap this video up, I gotta mention a few more things. One thing is the item warning system. I swear it feels like a major downgrade compared to previous Mario Kart games. Warnings for blue shells, coins, and bullet bills seem to work fine. But as for everything else, I swear it's like the game's not warning me for stars, mega mushrooms, or red shells until they're practically already on top of me, which makes it a lot harder to avoid these items than it really needs to be. Another thing which I find absolutely unfortunate is the fact that they no longer have a replay mode, at least not one where you can go back and rewatch previous races. I'm a little surprised that no one has talked about this, but then again, I often saw a lot of posts of people who didn't know what the star icon at the top left corner of the results screen in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe did. So I feel like a lot of people had no idea it even existed, but for me, I made heavy use of it in my montages, and without it, I can no longer get those camera angles that I like to grab for certain clips anymore. And here I was hoping they would make it more customizable. And what about 200cc? How is this not a thing in this game? I know they consider 150cc to be the standard speed in which to play Mario Kart at, but there was no reason to remove 200, a mode that I, among many other players, thoroughly enjoyed. Especially given how the courses in this game seem better suited for it for the most part. The last thing I need to mention is the whole 24 racers thing. On paper, this should be perfect for a game like this, but in practice, combined with a lot of the other issues this game has, I find it to be way too chaotic to be enjoyable. I have found that I enjoy the game a lot more in lobbies where there are only like 8 to 12 players. If they really felt the need to increase the player count, I feel like maybe 15 or 16, maybe even 18 would have been good, but 24 just creates too much chaos and really isn't enjoyable, particularly online. I'd say that just about wraps up my thoughts on Mario Kart World. While I do think that in many ways this game does a lot better at certain things than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has, I also think it has too many shortcomings for me to consider it the best Mario Kart game of all time. The track design, core gameplay mechanics, and graphics are really good, but a lot of features are missing, the character select screen is subpar, and online needs serious work. Do I at least think the game is worth $80? I mean, in my personal opinion, as a longtime Mario Kart fan, I would not pay that much for this game, knowing what I know about it now. But with the bundle, you can essentially get it for just $50, which I would consider to be the game's true value. Unfortunately, the bundle isn't gonna last forever, so I'd get it like very soon. I do hope that Nintendo will eventually come around and fix some of the gameplay and online flaws this game has, but as it stands right now, I can't say it's my favorite Mario Kart experience. I really do like this game, and I see what Nintendo is trying to do with it. I just think they're trying way too many new things at once. What they really should have done is slowly introduce the features this game offers, one entry at a time, in order to get a feel for how to improve upon it in the future. But with them trying so many things and it backfiring as tremendously as it does, Mario Kart World really ended up holding itself back. But despite the game's many shortcomings, I would say it comes pretty damn close to being the best game in the series. While I don't think the game will ever claim the top spot, if Nintendo just tweaks things just enough, it can get pretty close. I really do wish the best for this game, and I hope Nintendo will pull through. But with that being said, I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.